Hey guys, welcome to the Electromaker Media Maker podcast, episode 6. Thanks as always for listening. If you haven't already done so, we would really appreciate if you went over to the iTunes store or your favorite podcast app and left us a review, a rating, and subscribed. Today, we are going to talk to Matt Farley, a very talented maker and cryptocurrency expert, the creator of the world's smartest home, which operates using blockchain. You can follow him at jarvisfarley.com as well as on YouTube at Matt Farley. You can follow us at electromaker.io on the internet, electromaker.io on Twitter and Facebook, and electromaker_io on Instagram. You can check me out, senior editor Mo Long, at Mitchell C. Long on Twitter and Instagram. That world's smartest home with blockchain, that I really want to dig into because there's just like a ton going on with it. So how did you envision that project?
Yeah, good question. So from the non-technical, from the parenting side, obviously, you can see in today's world, kids are stuck on iPads, they're stuck on media, their focus isn't what it used to be, and so we wanted to kind of force, not, I don't know if force is the right word, but we wanted to have our kids to have some responsibility, some accountability, and not just allow them to use Xbox all day or play on iPads all day. So we kind of invented this system of, in our minds, of kind of these fictitious points. You have to earn points. At the same time, we also wanted them to do chores and be responsible. So let's have them do chores to earn points and be responsible. And around that same time, blockchain was, taking off in the industry. And at work, as an IT manager, blockchain, I'm sitting in meetings all day talking about, well, what does blockchain mean for Chevron? How are we going to leverage blockchain in our business? And I'm just kind of upset that I have to sit in management meetings that I can't go play with blockchain. So I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I need to be able to play with Ethereum blockchain. I want to figure these things out. I want to write my own cryptocurrency. I want to write some code. So it was the marriage of those two things. Like, okay, I can scratch this itch by creating a cryptocurrency for my kids that will act as their tokens, and I can learn about blockchain, learn about Ethereum, and I get to write code and deploy it on an Ethereum blockchain. So it was educational for me. It facilitated our kids hopefully being responsible and accountable at home. And then it also armed me with knowledge, so when I'm at the office sitting in those meetings about blockchain, I really understand the technology.
And it seemed like there was probably a lot of complexity to that project, since there was just there were all these moving parts. So do you recall any challenges that you encountered while working on that?
Oh, you broke up. Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Oh, do you recall any challenges that you encountered while working on that?
Oh, you're still breaking up. Sorry.
Oh no. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think you're back now. The last part I heard was, what were the challenges?
Yeah, what were some of the challenges that you encountered while working on that?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, on the moving parts, if you watched all 12 or 12 videos of the world's smartest home, what really doesn't come through, what's happening behind the scenes is a lot of those use cases, there's so many different moving parts that have been built upon each other to integrate together. So some of those use cases, it was actually, all of the pieces had been in place through other use cases, and I just had to come on and add a thin layer to glue it all together to make the magic happen. So with the blockchain one, there wasn't a lot of that in place, and blockchain was new, and so one of the biggest challenges was actually learning how to properly leverage the Ethereum language. It's called Solidity. And if you look at the syntax of Solidity, it looks like C++, it looks a little bit like Java, and you think like, oh, okay, I know C++, I know Java, I can go in there and just kind of do what I normally do in my development, object-oriented programming. But Solidity, because it doesn't run on a computer, it runs on a network of Ethereum, its characteristics are very different. So maybe a poor analogy would be like, oh, I've taken care of mammals with 2 eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs, so I know how to take care of them. And then like a dog is different from a human. They're both mammals, but man, they're just different beasts. So this Solidity was such a different beast, and that you write a few lines of code that should be something very simple in C++, and in Solidity it flat out doesn't work that way, or it doesn't perform the way you think it should. So getting over those hurdles, and even then once you've written the code, the act of getting the code deployed on a blockchain it's just new and different, and it seems a lot more cumbersome than it should be. And I think a lot of that is just that all of this technology is brand new, so the tool set around it to make it more simple is not quite there. So yeah, just the learning curve on all of that and making it work.
I actually wasn't too familiar with Solidity, so I just looked it up while you were talking about it. I'll have to like research that a lot more. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. It's powerful. If you think about the concept of instead of code executing on a CPU, a server, your code actually lives on a network, and it uses the resources of the network to power the business logic. It's kind of interesting.
Absolutely. And so you used blockchain for Jarvis Farley, and you mentioned also kind of using it for work. Can you talk a little bit about how you view the cryptocurrency and blockchain space? Because I know there are a lot of differing opinions on that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm by no means an expert, but I guess my personal perspective, especially coming from the office, a big corporation where I can tell you day in, day out, there are high-paid consultants telling them, oh, you need to use blockchain, it's the latest and greatest. And there's very senior vice presidents that are feeling like we're missing the boat if we're not using blockchain. So everybody's talking about how are we going to use blockchain? But I think the reality is that one, it's just a very nascent technology. It's in the womb. And I don't think anybody knows what this baby's going to look like when it grows up. Everybody's excited. We figured out how to procreate, but nobody knows what babies are going to look like when they grow up. So nobody has really found any simple, meaningful use cases. But I'd say the one area that does stand out is workflows or use cases that require trust between multiple different parties. And one analogy I like to use at oil and gas, for example, is the intersection of Internet of Things, IoT, and blockchain. And on the blockchain piece, it's all about the smart contracts. So smart contracts is just another way of saying your code, your business logic that executes on the blockchain. And so if we talk about the current state of a workflow, and it might be how we ship oil or petroleum chemicals. So let's imagine we have an oil tanker in the Gulf of Mexico for that oil to be shipped from Mexico to Africa. We might have a contract with the shipper that, okay, according to our contract, you need to keep this oil, under 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can't have this much vibration, you can't have this much humidity. These are all the terms and conditions. If you're late because of weather, here's a penalty. If you're late because of sickness, here's a penalty. If your boat breaks down, here's a penalty. So you might have 50 terms and conditions in your contract as to how much we're going to pay that person to ship our oil. So if right now maybe we need middlemen, we need lawyers, and we argue with them about why they were late or why the oil got too hot or vibrated too much. We think it vibrated too much. They don't think it did. So imagine a scenario in the new world where us and everybody involved in that, we've all agreed to certain sets of business logic of smart contracts that live on a blockchain. And then the boat itself is instrumented with IoT sensors. And those sensors actually physically sense the temperature, the humidity, the vibration. And then we all agree that weather.com or something is going to be our source of truth for weather. And so the code on the blockchain would look at all of those variables. It would get the sensor data, get the weather data, and then the blockchain would be the middleman for the money transaction. If that oil makes it there on time without any penalties, the blockchain transacts the financial transaction between us and the third party. There's no arguing. There's no looking at data. There's no back and forth. It's just seamless because that smart contract did it, and then the money uses a blockchain to transfer. So I think things like that can be really game-changing. So supply chain, But what it takes is multiple companies getting together and agreeing on a set of standards, agreeing to use the same network, the same technology. And so Deloitte calls this a consortium model. You have to create a consortium to do this. So that's in the business sector. I think on the personal side, things like Bitcoin, people using cryptocurrency to buy things. Personally, I do think that X number of years from now, a lot of countries will be using financial systems that are somehow on a blockchain or some type of or form of cryptocurrency. But I really have no idea how many years out we are, and if it's going to be Bitcoin, Litecoin, whatever coin, what kind of coin. I think that the technology will infiltrate the financial sector, and 30 years from now, Bank of America is going to be using some type of blockchain to transact things.
From my limited research on crypto, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So one thing I also want to dig into, which I mentioned earlier, is kind of what I was talking about of balancing day job and maker projects. So how are you able to accomplish that?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that. They look at those videos and then they look at me and they're like, okay, either you have no life or you've neglected your family. Like, how have you possibly been able to do that? Because a lot of people have hobbies and whatnot. So I would say for me, several factors are, I think one, the biggest thing is what you are seeing is kind of the culmination of many, many years of bits and pieces being built. So you're seeing the pyramids, but for years I've been doing building blocks here and there. That server Jarvis, I didn't call him Jarvis, but I've had a home server for 15 years. And for the past 15 years on that home server, I've been writing little bits and pieces of code that do things for me, that automate things for me. So it's just been building on top of that platform for many years. It was really where it really exponentially took off was when the Echo came out, when I realized, oh my gosh, I can now talk to my computer instead of manually triggering things. Then it took off. So there was that. The other thing is, like I said, with Chevron, with the every other Friday off, that at least gave me a couple days a month where I could try to sit down and focus in and do some and write some code. And then the other thing is, the only thing I really watch on TV is NBA. And so if the NBA is not on TV, I'm not binge watching on Netflix. I'm not channel surfing. I'm going to be at my desk and I'll probably try to work on some code or do something. But I do have a life. I'm a very active basketball player. I go to the gym 4 times a week. So there's that. And then the kids factor. When we lived in the U.S., we homeschooled. So they were always home when I was home. And yeah, so like on the every other Friday off, they're doing schoolwork. I'm working on that. But yeah, that's my rambling answer of how I managed to do that.
That was a great answer.
But it plays into the second question, the number 2 question that I get from people is, and this is probably actually the first thing they ask is, Matt, why in the world do you not sell this? And like non-IT people, just parents look at me and they're like, take my money, please. And so this goes back to, this ties in with the first question is, when you're building software and writing code, just to get it working in its bare format is probably 20% of the work. The other 80% of the work is making it work all of the time, 100% reliable, bulletproof. It works on my machine, your machine. It works in China, works in Japan. It works with no matter what kind of hardware you throw on it. So as I'm building out Jarvis to control our TV, it's very simple for me to get it to work just with my TV. It's probably 10 times as much work to get it to work with everybody's TV. So if I wanted to make this thing commercial and reliable, I would have to quit my job. I would need a team of 3, and we would have to sit in a room and just bang on this thing for probably 6 to 12 months before we had something we could sell to other people and they could put in their house. And to do that, I would have to quit my job and kind of bet the farm, bet my family's livelihood that I'm going to, change careers. And like I talked about earlier with my family, I'm not I am risk averse. I'm not the type of guy to say, honey, I'm going to make us rich. I'll quit my job and do this. It was more like, hey, I do this for fun, and yeah, it's really awesome. if it ever makes money somehow, if somebody comes to me and says, Matt, we would like to buy all of your intellectual property. We know it's not a product, just we want to buy your code and we'll go make the product. I would be jumping for joy on that kind of thing. But yeah, so I don't have time to make it reliable, robust, and scalable for everybody.
And
Because I have a
presumably
family.
you have more of a work-life balance working for someone else as opposed to like having your own company.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I know even when like something simple goes wrong, like I gave my parents access to my Plex server, and when they
Yep.
text me and they're like, "Plex isn't working," I'm like, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
It's like they don't
exactly.
understand how
It's a
this
nightmare.
works, do they? It's like this isn't like
Right.
Netflix, guys. Well, it is,
Yep.
but it isn't.
Right.
So, out of curiosity, what's your favorite NBA team, and what position are you usually when you play basketball?
Um, so I've played since I was 11 or 12, and I'm 6'3", 230 pounds, so I've always been the big guy on the court. So in high school I played center, and in the Philippines I'm for sure always the big guy on the court. So I usually play center, big man, down low, but for fun I do try to advance my guard skills and dribble and shoot and whatnot. It was kind of fun. Before we moved back to the Philippines in 2015, 16, 17 in Texas, I was playing with a group of friends who were actually very good basketball players, and most of them were taller than me. And so then I could be more of a guard and actually kind of dribble more, and even though I'm not good. Anyway, from a favorite NBA team, growing up, when the Sacramento Kings had Vlade Divas, Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, and they kind of made a run to the championships, then I was diehard Kings as a team. But ever since then, when they went downhill, I've been more of a fan of players. So I'm a fan of whoever Russell Westbrook is playing for, whoever LeBron James is playing for, whoever Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing for. I like those guys, and I root for their teams, but I don't have an attachment to a team.
Nice.
What about you?
That's kind of how I am as well with NBA. With like college basketball, I have a team, Tar Heels. I went to UNC,
Okay.
so
Ah, very cool.
yeah. So they're my team. And then with like American football, I have a team, the Eagles.
Oh, cool.
And then with soccer, I like Arsenal. So
Okay. Speaking of the Eagles in Texas, the guy across the street from us was an Eagles player, and we didn't live in a rich neighborhood. Everybody's like, why is there a Philadelphia Eagles guy living in our neighborhood? And we got to know him when he moved in, and it's because his parents and his wife's parents are from the area, and they want to be near. They want eventually when they have kids, they want their kids to be around grandparents and family. And also, he was a rookie, so he didn't. He was on a rookie contract. You don't buy a mansion usually on a rookie contract, but he.
that's kind of cool.
You may know him. His name is. Oh man, no, I can't remember his name. But he's a giant Tongan. He's a lineman, like maybe a defensive end or something. But I think he goes by V, Big V. But he's got one of those really long Tongan names. But he's like a 6'8" lineman. But he does start.
Oh, it's like who I'm gonna butcher that pronunciation. Vaitai. Yeah.
Yeah, that's him.
I
Yeah, so he
cannot
was
for the
first.
life of me pronounce his first name.
Yeah.
He's
Super
just
nice
across the
guy.
street.
Yeah, it's a super nice guy, down to earth. Like in the NFL, and then he has a Super Bowl ring.
That's hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah. Did you play basketball by chance?
I did, and I'm making this call for my co-working space. A couple of my friends here, like we go play pickup some, but I'm not like on a team still or anything. Yeah, I just played like in like all through high school, and then since I went to UNC, I was obviously on the basketball team there.
Right.
So I just did like we had like intramurals, so I was like on a couple of those teams.
Awesome.
I just like it because it's fun and it's kind of an engaging way to get some cardio as well because you're
Exactly,
like doing
yeah.
something.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
it's a lot of fun. So, how do you decide what projects to work on, and what do you have that you're working on next?
Yeah. So it almost goes back to when I worked for the county, and it's like whatever I feel like. Some days I walk in the door and felt like database. Other days I walk in and felt like telecom. So that's the cool thing about this being a hobby and not something I force upon myself to try to make a living or anything. It's, when I have time to sit down at the computer, what do I feel like working on? Do I feel like working on something with, my media automation or the lights or what? But what I try to do is, as I, go through life and ideas pop into my head of, oh, this would be a cool thing to automate, I add it to the list. So I always have a very long to-do list. And then it's just when I sit down, I look at the list and I say, okay, what stands out today that will fit in how much ever time I have? And it actually, I have the itch to work on that type of thing right now. It's very, very free form. The things that now I'm interested in doing would be modules related to artificial intelligence, partly because that's what I was getting into in my last job at Chevron. And I think there's some fun stuff to be done there. And so when I first did the World's Smartest Home videos, I think there were 11. And then right before we moved to the Philippines, I added number 12. And number 12 was the artificial intelligence module. So I don't know if you had seen number 12.
That one was pretty cool.
Yeah, where the kids, is the room messy or clean? Yeah, and then take a photo with the camera, and artificial intelligence labels your photo for you. So that kind of stuff I think is fun and interesting and cool. And so the one I've been thinking about is one of the artificial intelligence services that all of the big vendors are coming out with is a service that you feed it a video. Like, for example, what you and I, imagine that we recorded our little chat here. You take that video and you give it to the AI service. And the AI service will go through and transcribe everything Matt said, everything Mo said, with timestamps on what we said. And then it'll categorize the sentiment of what we said, like if it was a positive sentiment or a negative sentiment. And then that could all be in a searchable, indexable database. And then it will even identify things in the video. So if in the video, if I had a cat jump on my lap, it would identify, oh, there's a black cat on Matt's lap. And so within the service, once you have done the artificial intelligence analysis and it's in some kind of library, you could just go say, hey, search for black cat. And it would show you at timestamp 546 in this video, there was a black cat type of thing. So what I've been thinking about a lot, again, from a family use case perspective, is journaling. We believe that journaling is a healthy thing to do. It's good for you, good for your posterity. But we never do it because we never force ourselves to sit down and write, either pencil and paper or even on the keyboard. And I really want my kids to keep a journal, and I need to keep one for grandkids and great-grandkids. So thinking about this technology that's available now, I want to have a Jarvis module that's like Did you ever watch Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, me too. I love that show. And thinking back to the captain's log, they have captain's log of, Captain Picard and all of his log entries. So I'm thinking of a captain's log module where I can just go up to any computer in the house that has a built-in webcam and say, hey Jarvis, I want to do, Matt's captain's log for the day or something. And so Jarvis would have the computer immediately start videotaping my journal entry, and I would just talk to it like I'm talking to you, talk about what happened today, what's going on, what makes me happy and sad. And then Jarvis would take that video and send it to one of these AI cognitive services that would do all of the metadata, the indexing, what was said, what was positive, what was negative. And so if our whole family is doing that, we would build up this library of archives of Matt's captain logs, my wife's captain logs, my daughter's captain's logs. And then as she gets older and throughout life, she would have that database available, and we could have graphs and charts that could show the sentiment of her journal entries over time. Like if she could look back and say, yeah, my freshman year in high school was really hard for me. I fought through depression. We would see on the logs the graph of her sentiment analysis on her videos going down and then going up. And then she could click on that and zoom in and watch those videos from her life. So it's a way of kind of capturing their life, but using the artificial intelligence cognitive services that are available now to really make it interactive and useful, as opposed to just saving a video on a drive somewhere.
I like that idea a lot. That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So you can see this is our living room. We actually don't have anything yet because our furniture's not here yet. So we've we've moved overseas 5 times, and so every time what happens is you pack up your house, they put it in a shipping container, and it takes about 2 months, 2 to 3 months to get to your destination. So all of our furniture and my computers are in Jarvis. They're in a shipping container in the middle of the Pacific right now, and hopefully at the end of the month they arrive in the Philippines, and then they bring it to our house and unpack it. So I can't work on it. I haven't been able to work on anything for 2 months now, and I have one more month to go. But once it's here and set up, I can build the world's smartest apartment here where we're at, and then start working on the new modules.
Are you going to document setting the apartment back up?
Probably not, because it's not going to be as cool as the house was. Because one story about that house is we'd been based in Texas for 12 years, and so in Texas, Chevron sent us to Scotland. We kept our house. We came back to the house. Chevron sent us to the Philippines. We kept the house. Came back from the house. So when we came back in 2015, we were like, okay, it's time to build our second house, or build. And we actually thought it was going to be our dream house, because I thought I would stay with Chevron forever. I didn't know the Philippines was going to lure me back. So we built the house you saw in the video. That was our dream home. We had just built it. And during construction, because I knew I wanted to do home automation, I was telling the builder, yeah, put electrical outlets in the attic. So above our ceiling, in the rafters of the attic, I want electrical outlets, and I want cables run here all over the place. And the builder's asking, like, man, what? Nobody asked for this stuff. What are you doing? And I'm like, hey, just trust me. And if I felt like the person I was talking to was IT savvy, I would say, I'm going to have echoes recessed in the ceiling, and they need to plug in the attic. I'm going to have cameras up attached in the ceiling. They will be plugging in through the attic. And so we built that house with all of my use cases in mind, that the TVs would be on the wall, and they would have 50-foot HDMI cables funneled up through the attic into the closet. And so that was part of the cool factor of that Jarvis, was just the user interface was sexy, so to speak, because you had flat panel TVs in the wall, and you had recessed echoes in every room. No matter where you were in the house, you could speak and it would hear you. So all of that, like from a hardware perspective, it's not going to be nearly as exciting in this condominium, because we're on the 27th floor of a 40-story building. So we have a great view of the downtown Manila, but I don't have liberty to put things in the ceiling and drill into the walls and do the hardware like I did before. So instead of a wall-mounted TV, it's going to be a TV on a piece of furniture. And instead of a camera in the ceiling with wires going through the attic, it's going to be like a camera on a shelf plugged in on the floor where you can see the wire. So it won't be nearly as sexy, and some of the use cases won't be able to do here if the hardware isn't here. So the biggest example I can think of is the alarm system. Our house had the alarm system that I could interface with. This condominium doesn't have any alarm system, so any alarm system related thing won't work. So I'm going to implement probably 80% of what I had in the house, but it won't be nearly as sexy. But then I'll continue to add the modules like the captain's log type of thing.
Yeah, that's the difficult part about apartment life.
Yeah, yeah.
There's some things I like about it, like I don't have to rake the yard or cut the grass.
Exactly.
But then when I'm installing new electronics, I'm like, well, I could, if I had my own place, I could run these through the walls. But for now, I'm just like tacking this HDMI cable all the way around the room.
Yeah, yep. That's apartment life.
Yeah. So I see why it might not be as sexy. It would be fun to document, like I'm sure like other apartment dwellers would appreciate that. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see how it plays out. If it's just like, here's a camera on a shelf and I plugged it in on the floor, I'm not going to show people that. But if I do anything that people could reuse, then yeah, I would definitely show it.
So, of course, people watch your videos, but who do you watch? Like, what makers are you keeping it up with?
Good question. I'm not a big YouTuber. So I get most of mine through blogs. So like some of the things I subscribe to the email stuff is like, is it Hackster.io? Hackster.io?
Yeah.
So I look at their emails, and then I subscribe to a lot of technical blogs. I'm going to see if I can pull up my list real quick. see, because I don't really pay too close attention to which article comes from where, but like you, like I subscribe to the RSS feeds of things like Medium Technologies. I'm using, like I said, I don't have my computer. I'm on my wife's laptop, so I'm having to log in here. All right, technology. So these are the titles of some of the things. So of course, like the big ones like Ars Technica, Amazon's Alexa developer blogs, Android's developer blogs. This one's called Handpicked Stories on Technology from Medium. There's a home automation blog. I don't remember the guy's name. Addicted to Digital Media, Automated Home, Brent Evans, Geek Tonic, Maker Musings. I don't know if you've heard of him. Raspberry Pi blog, and Engadget, Lifehacker. Yeah, so most of it is just reading through feeds like that, and you know, if something's big and interesting, it usually makes it to one of those feeds, and I get to check it out.
That was a good list. There were a number on there that I'd heard of, but there were a couple I hadn't, including Maker Musings, which while you were talking, I Googled it, and I was like, oh, Amazon Echo and home automation. It's like one of the first posts on there, so I was like, I need to.
Hey guys, as always, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate the support, and we'd also appreciate it if you went to the iTunes store and left us a review and a rating and subscribed. You can also let us know on Facebook at Electromaker.io and hit us up on Electromaker.io on Twitter what makers you'd like us to feature on the podcast. You can follow Matt Farley at jarvisfarley.com, and you can keep up with him on YouTube under Matt Farley. You can follow us at electromaker.io on the internet, electromaker.io on Facebook and Twitter, and electromaker_io on Instagram. And if you want to follow me, Senior Editor Mo Long, you can keep up with me at Mitchell C. Long on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening, and keep on making.